We'll be spending a full week on the synthesis exam a little bit later in the marking period, but I thought this would be a nice activity to head you off to Thanksgiving break and also to introduce you to the synthesis exam. I'm going to read through the instructions and then just give you a little bit of insight into how to approach it, and then we'll talk about what I'd like you to do. This one was created for Thanksgiving, and it focuses on cartoons. Often on the synthesis exam, you'll receive a number of short articles and then 1 or 2 graphics. For some reason, students tend not to use the graphics as evidence. I don't know if it's a matter of not understanding them or they feel like the text is easier to pull quotations from, but the graphics, whether it's a cartoon or a graph, are often really great resources. So let me go ahead and just read the intro to you, and then we'll talk for a little bit. Suggested reading and writing time, 55 minutes. It's suggested that you spend 15 minutes reading the question, analyzing and evaluating the sources, and 40 minutes writing your response. That's going to be standard. You'll see that on any synthesis exam. Note that you may begin writing your response before the reading period is over. In other words, you get 55 minutes total, but maybe you only spend 10 minutes reading, and so you can start early. You don't have to spend the full 15 minutes reading. I would definitely use some of those 15 minutes, though, to plan. Cartoonist David Horsey claims the encroachment of Black Friday into Thanksgiving evening seems not only insane, but also disturbingly unpatriotic. This, along with the concerns about talking politics at the table and the encroaching distraction of technology, some claim is challenging the concept of gratitude that many Americans associate with the holiday of Thanksgiving. Carefully read the following 6 sources, including the introductory information for each source, then synthesize material from at least 3 of the sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-written essay in which you develop your position on whether or not Thanksgiving still symbolizes American gratitude. So just looking at those first 2 paragraphs, this is what you're going to see on the synthesis exam. They provide a quote or a passage that has a very strong claim. Then they ask you to look at 6 or 7 sources and pull from at least 3. The neat thing is at the end of that second paragraph, they're always going to sum up for you what you need to do. So do a well-written essay in which you develop your position on whether or not Thanksgiving still symbolizes American gratitude. This is a good moment to pause and decide what you think before you hit the sources. Now, you do need to use them, of course, but first take a second. Do you feel strongly one way or the other? Because they're going to provide you support on both sides. Your argument should be the focus of your essay. Use the sources to develop your argument and explain the reasoning for it. Avoid merely summarizing the sources. Indicate which sources you are drawing from, whether through direct quotation, paraphrase, or summary. You may cite them as sources A, B, C, and so on. Just because you're going to be given a bunch of graphics does not mean that you can't use quotations. In fact, I would still argue that in political cartoons or social cartoons, you can absolutely pull quotations. Definitely listen to their advice. Just cite it as source A, B, C. Don't worry about using the author's last name unless you'd like to. And again, they're looking for you to use 3. Don't try and use them all because they're going to show different sides. You can use a sample as a counterpoint if you'd like, but I would aim to use 3 to 4. That's really the sweet spot. They also say here, avoid summarizing. That's a really, really big problem that a lot of people do. They summarize the source, and instead of using multiple sources to support a point you're making, they simply regurgitate or spit back a point that one of the sources is making. So you want to avoid doing that. What I'm going to ask you to do is go through this, and instead of writing the full response, you're simply going to be creating a strong thesis, 2 to 3 strong body points, and then pulling quotations or paraphrasing examples to support those points. We're just going to go through really quickly and look at the different sources. I'm not going to analyze them for you because, of course, that's what you'll be doing. But again, normally on a synthesis exam, you're going to see mostly article excerpts, book excerpts, and then maybe 1 or 2 graphics. For this one, all of them are cartoons, but I think that's a really great example, or great practice rather, for you to work with them. This first one, now let's go around the table and share what we are thankful for in 140 characters or less. As you go through the synthesis exam, the first thing you want to do is do a quick read through of each source. If it were me, what I would do is just off to the right, I would simply jot down a summary bullet point. For example, and I'll analyze this first one for you, and then I'll leave you to analyze the rest on your own. But this one to me would absolutely point to the fact that we have lost the idea of Thanksgiving, because it's called literally a Twitter Thanksgiving, and it's showing technology creeping in. Basically, the man giving the toast is saying, you can tell me why you're thankful, but it's going to be really brief and short, promoting again that technology is kind of pushing in on traditional Thanksgiving values. The second one is entitled The Last Thanksgiving. You'll notice that they give the source at the top. Most of these are pretty contemporary, but it's important to look at those sources because once in a while they will throw a really outdated source at you. Probably not one you'd want to use. This one is entitled The Last Thanksgiving, and then they're going through can't have salt, lactose intolerant, vegetarian, vegan, macrobiotic, fanatic traditionalist, on a cleanse, strictly kosher, ultra picky gourmet, allergic to gluten. Again, I would take a minute and I would just to the right say, are they pro or con? You can do a plus or minus the idea of how we view Thanksgiving now. Source C is entitled Boy's Life. Actually, I believe that's the source that it's from, so there's not a title for that one. Dude, I have a ton of online followers and they all want to have me over for dinner. The next one is simply entitled Thanksgiving, Then and Now. So crowded, are we there yet? And that's obviously the boat coming over to America. So crowded, are we there yet? And this is traffic, which you can interpret as traffic to the holiday, traffic to Black Friday shopping, etc. Source E, Thanksgiving politics. And there are different things written on the walls. You can see different symbols throughout. For this one, you're not going to be able to pull quotations necessarily, but you certainly can find different symbols throughout the picture. Source F, The New American Tradition. I don't like having Thanksgiving dinner in a parking lot. Just be thankful for what? For being first in line at the Black Friday sale. So one thing that's a little bit different about these from other prompts, typically they will present prompts and sources that really support both sides. I would argue for this one, since it's created for Thanksgiving, it's definitely leaning more towards one side than the other. However, you still can take your own stance as long as you can find moments within those sources that support it. So again, what I'm going to ask you to do is instead of writing the full response, because we haven't looked at a full synthesis response yet and really analyzed it, I'm just going to ask you in the assessment to write a strong thesis statement, write 2 to 3 body points, and then pull specific examples for each of those points. A way to make sure that you're not summarizing is use 2 examples for each body point. So in other words, what I mean is instead of just saying, look, here's source B, I agree and it agrees with my thesis, instead you're saying, here's my body point, as can be seen by support in C and F. If you use multiple examples in your support, then you're guaranteed that you're not just spitting back one, but instead you're synthesizing. And that's really the goal of this one. And I know we've talked about this before, but it's that idea of taking the sources to create something new. They're not just asking you to tell them what the sources say. They pick them, they know that. Okay, head to the assessment, and if you have any questions, let me know. Again, this week we're not going to be having 4 steps, but instead 1 activity for Monday and Tuesday. I do not assign homework over the break. If you need anything before the break begins, if there's makeup work, if you'd like Scholastic help, I'm really encouraging folks to enter Scholastic. Please contact me Monday or Tuesday. Otherwise, whatever you celebrate, whatever you plan on doing, I hope you have a wonderful few days off.